I don't want people to assume that just because most people in the world are doing the traditional 9 to 5, check box of grad school, whatever, I don't want them to assume that that's what they should be doing too.
Hey, Creating Maven. I'm Joy Spencer, your reframe specialist, with one important message. Your real work, it's not your job or your career. Your real work is what you create. And what you create is what sets you apart and makes you incomparable. It's your legacy. I'm here to show you a whole new way of working so you can create with your gifts, make a unique contribution, and finally get paid to be yourself. This is Reframe to Create. Sometimes it just doesn't fit. When that happens, what'll you do? Keep hoping it'll get better or create something new? That's the question my guest for today's episode had to ask herself. And when she answered that question for herself, boy, did she come up with something you're gonna love. Ashira Jones is someone I've known through mutual friends and colleagues for a few years. She's an intuitive leadership coach with an MBA and over 15 years of experience working with ambitious professionals, including introverts, which I just love that she has a special soft spot for introverts. Her passion in coaching is to help her clients break free from society's stifling expectations so that they can design a life surrounded by work and relationships that are ideal for them. Isn't she just perfect for us here at Reframe to Create? I think so, especially since she's initiated and grown through many reframes in the form of several career shifts and entrepreneurial ventures. She is living out reframes, y'all. We've met in person once, and in that short meeting, I was intrigued by her, not only, I'm setting my own beat, but I'm also going to dance to it kind of vibe. And I've been following her on LinkedIn for years and just in awe as she jet sets to different locations to not just vacation, but also do work. And I don't know if I've told y'all this, but this is also a dream of mine, to be able to live a life of travel like all the time, not just being on vacation, but something that's integrated into my whole life, living, working in different places, to truly be location agnostic when it comes to all of life and work. Now, one thing I know is that when someone is doing something differently, it's because they also think differently and have a different perspective. And I wanted to learn more about her perspective so that we can all learn and get inspired and get inspiration for a new way of going about this. Ashira did not disappoint, and she gave so many nuggets in this episode, so many nuggets of wisdom. She lives what I talk about with Sawita Kamar in episode 56, Liberate Your Work. She has cracked the code on liberating her work, and what I found interesting and pulled out of this conversation were some key steps and her process to creating something new for herself, a process that you can also use to move closer to the work and life that you want. I started by digging right into the foundation of it, her work philosophy.
My work philosophy is do work that you enjoy with people that you enjoy on your own terms as much as possible. That's my work philosophy. And actually, as I say it out loud, I realize how opposite my old philosophy was. And so maybe that's how I came to it, is that I hated the old philosophy so much that I had to flip it on its head and do something completely different.
And what was that old philosophy?
The old philosophy is what most people get as they approach college, which is get your college degree, do an internship, network, have a skirt suit and pumps in every color, get a graduate degree, work your way up, work hard, be resilient no matter what, and poof, you'll have the American dream. The American dream in air quotes.
And what about that was not appealing to you? Because I think for a lot of people, that is what the track that they're on and what they think is appealing and is the way to success. So what about that was not appealing to you?
You know, what's interesting, I've gone back and looked at some of my journals from when I was in college and I was in my internships. And even as far as back then, I remember writing that like I didn't want to go to the office and my coworkers are not ideal. So what was not appealing about it, I think, is so much. Like I never wanted to wear skirt suits, and the internship program that I was part of really encouraged us to dress professionally, and that was the traditional skirt suit for girls and pumps and all that stuff. And why did I not like it? I think it just felt confining. And I don't know if I could say at that point why I didn't like it. It just never felt natural for me.
And I think that's true for a lot of people, but they wouldn't do what you've done, which is you've quit jobs.
All the jobs.
You've quit jobs, you've gone out and done your own thing. So tell us more about that inclination and that instinct to quit and to craft your own, to create your own work experience, and what does that look like? But I want to know how do you get to that?
I think I got to it through frustration. It was definitely not my instinct. I had to develop that instinct. So just to give you a little bit of background, I came from a low income household in North Omaha, and my parents encouraged all of us to go to college and, achieve more than they achieved. And so from an early age, I think it was sort of just baked into my plan that I would go to college and I would get some high paying job and everything would be great. So that's what I set out to do. I majored in management information systems. I chose that major for very practical reasons because I felt confident that I could get a job paying decent money after I graduated. This was right around Y2K, so I'm dating myself, but IT was especially big then. So that's what I kind of set my plan. Got my degree, went to go work for a bank doing IT, quickly realized I didn't want to spend 40 hours a week at that bank doing IT. So I switched to a nonprofit where got my first introduction to coaching, but I also at the same time got my MBA. I hated getting my MBA. I wanted to quit every semester because I didn't like it. It was not fun for me, but I fought through because this is what I'm supposed to do. And I also wanted to set an example for those in my family that getting a master's degree is possible. So I got the MBA and I had several more jobs that on paper looked like they should be a good fit, but in practice, I just didn't feel like it was ever somewhere that I wanted to stay long term. And so fast forward many, many years after several job changes and several location changes, plus the pandemic, I had to come to terms with the fact that the thing that I was really craving for my career, I was not finding it. And I could choose to change to another job and continue this pattern that wasn't working for me. Or I could say, like, enough is enough. I'm not going to apply for another job that I'm going to quit in 2 years. I'm just going to do my own thing and see what I can accomplish from that.
Did you hear that? Wow, let's hold up here for a second. I want you to take this in. I don't want you to just gloss over this because this lays the foundation for everything else. This is the key reframe. Did you hear what Ashira did there? How many of us have lived this over and over again, and it never occurs to us that this is possible? We've gone from job to job to job, trying to find a fit with no success. And rarely, if ever, does it occur to us to question and consider that maybe the whole job thing in and of itself, in its total entirety, is just not for us. And so that's why we are never going to find the supposed right one, right? Because it's just the whole thing is just not for us. So I want you to sit with that. Way back in episode 1, I said that the dream job is dead. And it took me a long time to come to that realization, but it seems like Ashira has figured it out and figured it out sooner. What I want you to zero in on is not just what she did, but the mindset. The take responsibility mindset that moved her from a posture of looking and constantly looking for jobs to be the answer, and then moving towards taking responsibility to create. Because this is the crux of all of it, my creating maven. Your mindset shift needs to take you from looking to a job or a boss to, trying to find it, whatever it is for you, and it needs to shift into creating for yourself. It needs to be the mindset that doesn't blame your job, your boss, your parents, your kids, your dog, your ex, your childhood, the person who cut you off in traffic, whoever. A mindset that doesn't blame anybody for why you're not creating what you want in life and work. Period. And because of that, you stop waiting and wasting your time and start creating in the direction of what you want and where you want to go right now. I asked Ashira to say more. What were you thinking when you were saying, I'm going to do my own thing? What were you conceptualizing in your mind? And how is it exactly or completely different from what the reality is?
Doing my own thing, when I was thinking about it, at the time that I quit my last job, was really do the work that I love and don't do the work that is completely not meaningful to me. I wanted to work with people in my network that I really admired and enjoyed and genuinely liked. And I wanted full autonomy of my time. I wanted to be able to take a nap at 2 p.m. if that's what I needed and not feel guilty about it. I want to be able to vacuum and do my dishes at 9 a.m. if that's what I feel like doing. And I can set my schedule around that and work out when I want to work out. It's really just full autonomy of my time that I was craving.
How does that work out in practical terms, right? So it's like this essentially you're an entrepreneur, and thinking about folks who are listening who may be shy, gun shy about that, and they're like, okay, that's not necessarily that's not appealing. The autonomy is appealing, the creativity, the having all this stuff around my time is appealing, but I don't know about really going out on my own. What would you say to that person?
Well, let me start with planning is key. I'll let the audience know I'm a single person. I rent my apartment. I don't own a home. I don't have any children, so that allows me a certain level of freedom that some may not have. Where you invest your time and your money is where your priorities lie, essentially. So if there's someone that's gun shy, I would say to them, make a plan. Figure out what you really want to do, how important it is to you. Make a plan and definitely talk to others that have done it to get some inspiration and tips from them.
Okay, so it's with everything. It's you don't have to just jump, you don't have to jump ship, but think it through and find what works for you and craft it and shape it in your own way that's going to support you.
If I was married and I had a husband that was making all the money, that might have allowed me to do this change differently and earlier. I'm not in that situation, but others maybe are. So just figure out like what you're comfortable with. I was lucky enough to have side income when I quit my full-time job, and I could just ramp those jobs up.
So tell us about that, because that is not insignificant. That's right. That's just not just a throwaway. But tell us about that, and because you are doing what I talked about a couple of episodes back about liberating your work when Savita Kamar came on, and we were talking about liberating your work from employer, pulling income for the work that you do from multiple places, multiple sources. It's a type of it's not passive income, right? It's not like, oh, money from real estate. It's not that, but because you are still working, there is a level of time for money that's happening, but it's from multiple places, right? So tell us about that. What does that look like, and how did you go about getting to the position or the place where you were pulling from multiple sources, essentially liberating your work?
Several years ago, this was probably around 2008 or so, I started writing resumes on the side because I loved career development. I loved helping people, empowering people. around careers. And so
Was that part of your day job already?
it was, yes. So at the time, I was working in essentially in a career coach role, and I decided I wanted to expand that and start my resume writing business. So I did that for several years and really enjoyed it. And then I started my coach certification through the Coaches Training Institute. And one thing that I love about their certification program is that they require all participants to charge for our coaching. We can decide what it is. I think I was charging maybe like $60 for an hour at the time. So it's up to us what to charge, but it was important in that it helped me practice asking for the business. So I continued to coach on the side while I did all of these other job transitions. 2017, I think, is when I took a career break. So for 6 months, 7 months, I didn't work and just tried to like regroup, reassess, take care of myself, etc. And once my career break was over, I started looking for jobs again. And one that I found was a part-time leadership coach through a company called Better Up. So I've been working with Better Up doing coaching since then, 2017, 2018, something like that. So that was one stream of income that once I quit my job for good, continued. I had also several coaching clients I had been working with that I recruited on my own through my certification program and my own business. And I'd been doing lots and lots of networking at the time. So at the time, I was working as director of coaching for an organization called Coaching for Everyone. That was another stream of income. Eventually, I got on with Chief, which is a leadership organization supporting executive women. So that ended up being another stream of income. And just through networking and connecting intentionally and unintentionally, I got exposure to other coaching opportunities. So that's what's interesting about entrepreneurship, trusting that the work is going to come to you. Because some of these opportunities were strategic and some of the income streams were just kind of happened because people trust me, trust my work, and they like me.
So you have, I think, up to 4 different income streams right now. So you've liberated your work in 4 different ways. So if I'm following the trajectory, the path was you were in a full-time job, and the work that you were doing there, the expertise that you developed there, you started finding ways to do that on the side in your own side hustle, your own side practice, and
Yes.
continue to always invest in that and build that. And then, when you went out on your own, you found you had that body of work to leverage to continue doing that in other places and other spaces. And you're doing the same work. You're expanding that work of expertise. It's not like you're doing a hodgepodge of different things, but doing it in different places and leveraging and using your network to continue to find and seek out other opportunities.
Right.
When do you find the time? I know folks are thinking, they're like, okay, here's Ashira, she's already admitted, she's single, no kids, like what's going on? She got all the time. How am I, Sue or Jane or Bob, in the kitchen right now with the 3 kids who are hanging on to me, demanding my attention. My boss is pinging me on the other side. All this stuff is happening. Yes, I have all this great skill. I have all this talent. I have this amazing thing that I can do. But when am I going to sleep? When am I going to eat? How can I do this? Is it possible for everyone to do this?
So, in my experience, especially through coaching, I find that many of my clients are challenged with setting boundaries, saying no, taking care of themselves first, and getting to a place where they're focused on the most important things in their life. Of course, the kid's always going to be at the top. Doing a good job in your day job is always going to be important, but your boss pinging you and all of those emails, and there's some amount of like noise that can go away, so that, or you can choose to have it go away so that you can focus on, how do I build this business? What am I good at? How am I going to launch this thing? What's my transition plan from full time to entrepreneurship? So I would say to those folks, like, what are the boundaries that you're going to put in place so that you can be focused on this thing if it's that important to you.
How do you know the difference between noise and what should be there?
That's a good question. I think it's usually noise if it's like giving you anxiety.
Mm.
It's noise if it has some effect on your body and in your body that's just like icky. Whereas if you know that you need to keep your day job for a while, there are obviously some things that you need to do to maintain that, like get a decent performance review. But that doesn't mean that you have to give every single thing at work your utmost attention. You have to figure out sort of what am I trying to say?
So yeah, the hierarchy. What's the priority, right? Being able to actually prioritize that, yeah, and I
Exactly.
think that that's a challenge for a lot of people to even conceive of that idea, right? For a lot of people, that's a challenging thought that like not everything at work,
Can be important, equally
right?
important.
It's like I'm
Yep.
like, oh, really? That's like sacrilegious for some folks. It's like no, everything, absolutely everything here is of the critical utmost importance, and just to challenge that thought, that notion that like it's not possible that absolutely everything here is a level 10, and you need to get your level 10 effort and energy and attention. So how can you be intentional about deciphering and distinguishing what is and what isn't so that you can do more of what you love? You talk about it, about doing the work that you love and that you want to do, and I talk about being mission minded instead of being job focused, and really thinking about what is the mission that I'm here to do that's bigger and broader than any given job or career that I'm in and temporarily. Like what's the legacy that I want to leave? How do I want people to feel when I do the work I do, or how do I want to feel? And that letting that start to organize and help you to prioritize the work that you do, and even the other jobs that you choose. And it might mean that you don't have to leave. And I hope people get this. It's not all, it's not always about leaving a job and becoming an entrepreneur. It is about finding different ways to make sure that the work that you do, that your work is liberated, what you create can get to more people and can be served by more people, because that will feed you and fuel you as well, not just others.
What I love about being mission minded is if you're focused on the larger picture of the work that you're here to do, it helps put things into context. For example, I'm thinking one of my clients who is a coach and a doula, and she really wants to do more of that work, which is especially important when you think about all of the statistics around Black maternal health. And she might have trouble like being in the limelight, or be challenged with being in the limelight, or being assertive, or putting herself out there. And so our conversation is, think about this in the context of like what you're here to accomplish and how important that work is and how many people need you. You think about it from that perspective, there's a whole bunch of BS that starts to fall away because it's not connected to that bigger mission.
Do you think that everybody has a mission? Because some people might be like, I don't know what these people are talking about with mission. I'm just here to do a job, get some money, put some food on the table, or yeah.
And that's your mission.
Mm,
That can be your mission too.
mm.
I think there's different levels of missions, but here's the thing. I don't want people to assume that just because most people in the world are doing the traditional 9 to 5 check box of grad school, whatever. I don't want them to assume that that's what they should be doing too.
There are other ways to go about this. There are other ways to, obviously, as you're showing, there are other ways to pull income. There are other ways to do work. There are just other choices and options that folks have.
Exactly. So choose it, right? So if you choose to have a traditional full-time job, I mean, we need those folks too. 100%. But if you're frustrated in that role, don't assume that that's the only thing available to you. Decide that I am not willing to take maybe the risks that are associated with being an entrepreneur. This is honoring my values of security, financial security, etc. And this is where I want to be.
I like that. Choose it. Well, how does that change? Because we're both coaches. We talk a lot about choice in coaching. How do you think that idea of intentionally choosing and and intentionally making a choice, how does that change how people experience work, and how does that change what they either move deeper into or move away from, and what they tolerate and what they don't tolerate? That idea of choosing.
When you choose, you're not resentful. So if you're in a default situation, or if you're in a situation of having a more traditional corporate job, and you are feeling dis-ease in that job, and it's your boss's fault, and it's the company's fault, and it's your coworker's fault, you're likely to be resentful of that experience. Whereas if you say, like, these are the things that are very most important to me, here are my values, here's what I want to accomplish in 3, 5, 10 years, and given this situation of the traditional full-time job, I'm able to feel fulfilled and accomplish my goals. Okay, well, then this is where I want to be right now. I choose it. If it's not aligned with your goals, if it's not aligned with your values, if it's not aligned with all of the things that are very most important to you, then you maybe should make another choice.
Hmm. How do you know when that time has come? You said in a way that you always knew that this didn't fit, but there was a particular moment when you were like, okay, it's time for me, Ashira, to make this move. What were the things that you were experiencing on the inside, or that you were seeing and observing on the outside, that were your clue and that's your signal that now is the time for me to go out and to create it? I'm not going to find it, right? Because you had this clear before and after. You had this cleared point of, I'm trying to find it, I'm trying to find it, I'm trying to find it. And then you're like, it's never going to be found. I need to create it. What is that? What was happening in that space?
So this was, in the middle of the pandemic. It was summer 2021. And in my role at that time, as many organizations, I was experiencing a lot of change within the organization. So I was on a relatively small team, and both of my team members had left the company. So I was taking on some additional responsibilities, not necessarily being compensated for those. And again, it's pandemic, so it's like, what's going on in the world? What am I doing with my life? Like, this existential stuff is swirling, as well as just job duties. To be totally candid, like the day or the week that I decided that I don't want to do this anymore, I just remember thinking, like, I feel like I'm wasting my life. I have so much to offer. I'm not in a position to use those skills, and the things that I'm doing, they are not unimportant, but they are not important to me.
Important distinction.
Yes, absolutely. I didn't feel like any of my leadership cared about me. Like, they just want to make sure that the on teams that you're showing up in green. And I'm like, if my purpose today is to make sure my teams is green, there's something wrong. And this is not a problem that I want to fix. I want to just walk away and do what I really want to do.
I liked you used the phrase before when we talked more about being understimulated, and how being understimulated is also its own type of stress. And that's what you're describing here, this sense of, I have more to offer. I have more to give. Not enough, because there's that. Sometimes people feel overworked and like too much is being asked of them. And then for others, too much of the wrong things are being asked of them, and not enough of who they are and what they have to bring to the table. So you feel like this is a waste. And that's why I always encourage people to, every moment, find a way to create with your gifts, even if it's not being asked of you. And if there's no room on the job where you are for that, find somewhere else to do that, because you have to let it out. You said it is a type of stress to be understimulated that we don't talk enough about.
Yeah, I love what you said. If you're being asked to do too many of the things that don't stimulate you, then you have to get that from somewhere. And for me, that was why I got so much joy coaching on the side in the evenings. But I wanted to do more of that. Being joyful about my work just in the evenings for an hour or two wasn't enough. And so I decided I needed to expand that to take up my whole day.
And what you're describing is a process, right? It wasn't, yes, it sounds like, oh yes, you got to a point and then you left and you quit. But as you described before, it wasn't an overnight thing. You didn't just wake up one day and say, I'm leaving. You
No.
were building this, you were investing in this, you were investing in this part and aspect of yourself for a while before it got to that point. And I always try to encourage people, like, now is the time. Today's the day to start. You don't know where it's going to be. You don't know where it's going to end up. You don't know where the bridge is going to take you, but you need to take on the responsibility, and that the mindset that, like, this is it's no longer acceptable for me to be operating in the world in this way where I don't use my gifts and create something with it somewhere, somehow. It doesn't have to be on the job. And then also, why not take advantage of, if I'm not creating something different from what I do with my work wise, but if I'm doing something that can be, that other people can find valuable, how can I find way to do that in those other spaces? And as your coaching program taught you, ask for ask for the business, ask for money, like ask for something on the side to start building and flexing that muscle.
Yes. And one thing that's coming up for me that's really important, in all of this is confidence.
Mm.
So if you are someone whose self-talk is saying, like, I don't really know what I have to offer, or I don't have anything to offer, or people are not going to buy from me, or I just can't imagine how this could be successful, that has to change. That reflexive self-talk has to change in order for you to break out and do anything that's outside of the norm. So if that's something that people struggle with, I highly encourage working with a coach, a therapist, whatever you need to do to shift that. I was just talking about this with a client yesterday. It's like every time you have that negative self-talk, it's like a little paper cut, paper cut, paper cut, paper cut. And if you can shift that to loving and patient and encouraging talk, it's like a little fist bump or a little wink or a little pat on the back. And whether it's negative or positive, it's going to build inside of you and it's going to influence how you show up in the world and if you're successful.
Well, thank you for bringing that up, because that is back to the Hans conversation about, we make the mistake of being like, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to venture out. As he said, new year, new me, and not taking care of, like, what are the existing narratives, the self-talk, as you said, what are the things that are holding me back that's going to hinder this, that's already there, that's already existing, right? Like you already talked about, like, many people feel like that the 9 to 5 is the only way, or that they don't have anything to offer. Really bringing to their awareness those things and really beginning to deconstruct and tackle them so they can take on what we're talking about, so that you can say, well, maybe there's another way. And maybe there's another way. It doesn't have to be the Ashira way. It doesn't have to be the Joy way. It doesn't have to be the Hans way, but maybe there is another way for me. Maybe this version of the work experience that I have is not the only version that I need to have, and that there can be another possibility. But first I have to tackle and do the work of investing. And I love that you bring up coaching to support myself through and in this, so that I can get to the other side. So following the thread, we've seen how you figured out how to liberate your work. You started it right in your full-time work. You started it slowly. You started charging a little bit, and you just sort of over time built these multiple alternative sources of income, to the point where you were able to and have been able to leave full-time work and are now working and operating that way. And that's an option that's open to others, and to the degree in which folks have the time, that you don't have to. I always want to let people know you don't have to leave your full-time job, because I think people feel like they need to to hear that. It's like, it's not a full-time job or a full-time entrepreneurship. It can be both. You can be an entrepreneur. You dabble in a little bit. I've even know of people who were entrepreneurs who have gone back into full-time work. So there's so much more flexibility and option and possibility. It's answering that question that you said about what's important to me right now, and how am I, focusing on that? Not necessarily, there's a lot of important things. It could be important to the job, it could be important to others, but is it important to me? And getting folks back to that, and getting folks back to their mission. So we've got that. And my other question for you, because it looks like you're not just doing your work with different places, in different organizations, but that you are often in different places, different locations. So
Yeah.
tell me more about that, because I see you bopping around. I see you in different places, in different countries, and I'm just like, that's the
Yeah.
dream. That's the dream to like send pictures from all over the place. So tell me about that.
It's such a blessing, honestly. Like I love my work. I love what I do every day. I love the conversations I have and the people I work with. And I love, again, the autonomy I have with my time. So like at my last employer, I was accumulating vacation hours at a really, really sad rate. So it didn't allow me much flexibility. And like I last quit my full-time job June 2021. And then that November, I went to Malawi for a month. And that was amazing and just something that I would not have been able to do if I was still in a traditional job. And I worked through that whole month. I've taken more vacations in the last 2 years than I have ever in my life. So at the beginning of this year, I was in San Andreas, Colombia for a week. I went to Guyana for a week. I am headed to Costa Rica for a week in October for my birthday. And these are just things that would not have been possible for me. Whereas now I look at my calendar and I'm like, I'm blocking the day, blocking the week. Like, what a great feeling. Like, I
Yeah,
have
it sounds amazing.
yeah, like I have two meetings today and I need the rest of the day for planning or for rest or for whatever. I'm blocking the day. Or I want to be out of the country in October. I'm just going to go ahead and block that week now. And I don't have to worry about like asking someone for permission. So there are definitely a lot of pros and cons and maybe trade-offs that you make when you become a full-time entrepreneur, and that's like a huge pro. Like you do what you want with your time.
Mhm. I love it. I love it. You're giving us a sense. And I hope opening us up to the possibility, to the idea that there are other ways of doing this, and that it is possible. It can be done, and it doesn't have to be done overnight. But that if you have that sense, if you have that fire burning in you, that you should figure it out. And as I said before, it doesn't have to look exactly how you've done it or how I would do it, but that there's so many people out here doing work differently and having a different philosophy and coming to a sense of that this way is not working for me, and I'm going to create something else. And I love that. I love that you've had the sense to do that and that you've done that.
Well, thank you. And I would tell people out there, if the thing you want, if you haven't seen it modeled for you, doesn't mean that you can't attain it.
Say more.
Well, again, like kind of going back to my college years, I was just surrounded by like that traditional work model. Do this, then this, then this, and this, and then voila. So I didn't really see this way that I work today. I didn't really see that until I got into my coach certification program and started meeting other coaches. Because once you start either working with a coach or becoming a coach, it's like the whole world becomes available to you. Because the question that we try to answer is like, what do you really want? Like, forget the BS. Like, what do you really want? And having those conversations over and over again and just seeing other coaches that are doing work they love with a lot of autonomy globally, you're like, well, damn, how can I get into that? So that was definitely very inspiring. Just getting into the coach community and seeing what's possible. So that hadn't been modeled for me as a young person. Like it wasn't until like my 30s that I'm starting to see like, oh, I could do that.
So by exposing yourself, it's back to that network. By exposing and expanding and finding a different network, you were able to get into and see other perspectives and see other possibilities and other worldviews. Really see how other people they had different narratives about around work.
Right.
They had different scripts running, and they had other senses of what was possible. And you could see, oh, there's another way, and there are other alternatives. And so that might be an important early step, right? Before you even before you even try anything, just like, have you exposed yourself to other folks instead of saying, I can't do this, it's not possible, this is the only way. How are other people doing this? Have you tried to initiate conversation with people who are from vastly different fields, vastly different life and work work styles than you, and just get curious, right? Bringing that curiosity in, and just to inquire and find out more. And I know that I've discovered a lot more from being curious and having people in my life who also have different perspectives and different ways. Because then you're just like, oh, you find out, you're like, oh, really? We can do that? I could do
Exactly.
that? And you won't know if you don't expand beyond your network of people who are working in the same way that you're working.
Right. Like look for opportunities to get out of your fishbowl.
Mhm.
And that might be as simple as someone popped up in your LinkedIn feed or Facebook feed that sparked some curiosity. Like reach out to them. And a lot of, again, going back to my coaching clients, a lot of folks feel awkward. Like, I don't know them. They're going to like think I'm weird or they'll think I'm annoying. Well, yeah, they might, but they probably won't. And if you don't ask, the answer is always no. So just honestly starting to reach out to people and say, hey, I saw you here and it really piqued my curiosity. Can we chat for 20 minutes? And what I love is like you go into it with a little bit of an agenda just to be curious, but inevitably in those conversations, something comes out of it that you wouldn't have even expected. So they might say, "Oh, you're interested in that? Can I connect you with this person?" Or, "Oh, I see this potential in you. You should think about this opportunity." So it now the possibilities start to expand and exponentially because you've gotten out of your comfort zone and you've started connecting with people and growing your network in ways that you hadn't before.
I've enjoyed where this conversation has gone, because I like that we haven't tried to put people back into a box of one or the other, or say, this is what Ashira did. This is her work philosophy. This is how she's done it. And this is what you need to do, but open up and dig into like the some of the mindsets and some of the thinking that's going to help and support them to explore. Get curious, right? Just get curious. Like you don't have to have an answer. Just start out getting curious. Explore. What do you want? Then after that, what do you want? What do you possibly want to create? That's like my go-to question. What's your mission? And maybe your mission right now is
Exploration,
yeah. Yes,
curiosity.
exploration, curiosity. That's a great starting mission. And then we want to eventually get to we're going to eventually need to, or maybe we need to do this earlier, going to need to continue to boost our confidence and get some help, get some support into our lives to get us past what's inevitably going to be that voice in the back of the head that's going to say you can't do this, or it has to be the same, or this is what the status quo is, and or who are you to try to
All that.
do something different. And
Yep.
and then that's going to come up, and many people like feel that. I've experienced that. And just push through and be open to the creativity that's going to come out, and how your thing might be completely different. And the folks listening, maybe you'll just be out there, and maybe you'll be the person to do something completely different, and I'm going to be like, oh my goodness, I need to have that person come on to Reframe to Create, to share about
Exactly.
how they've come up with a completely different work philosophy and model that supports them, supports their life, and supports what's important to them, and supports their mission.
Yeah.
So I like that. I like where we've landed with this.
I do too. And, it does take some time and intention. So if you are someone whose life is very full, have the courage to let a couple things go in service of doing this exploration, investing in this exploration. The only other thing I would say is like, if you have any doubts on if what you want is attainable, like honestly work with a coach. Whether it's like a few sessions or a bunch of sessions, working with a coach is going to always help you get clear, move forward, articulate what you want, move past negative self-talk. It's going to amplify all of the goodness in you that maybe you don't even know is there. So those are my parting words.
And what powerful and important words they are. Do you hear that, my creating maven? Don't do this on your own. Get help by working with a coach. If you're unclear or stuck, there's nothing like working with a coach to help you work through those blocks and get you on to the other side. I'm here to help you do this if you want to figure out how to liberate your work and get paid to be yourself through reframetocreate.com. And Ashira is an exceptional coach who you can also check out and reach out to through her website, ashirajones.com, or on LinkedIn or Instagram. And I have her details in the show notes. Don't agonize. Get help. We learned a lot today. Ashira showed us her roadmap of how to liberate your work from your employer so that you can do the work you love with the people you love more of the time. Isn't this what getting paid to be yourself is all about? Getting paid to work in your zone of genius over and over again and more. And furthermore, being able to pull income for your fabulosity from not just one source, but maybe 2, 3, or 4 sources like Ashira. This is important because we never want to put all of our eggs in one basket, that we always want to, and we always want to be building bridges to beyond and to our next. Because as you know, all jobs are going to come to an end. And if you're building your bridge now, you can have a smoother transition going forward, whatever that transition is into. Or you can drop the whole job thing altogether if that's your fancy. But if you're going to do that, it's better to build that now. Ashira did a few important things. 1, she took a part of what she was already doing in her day job and found a way to do it again outside. At first, she was doing this on her own right, offering the service directly on the side as a side hustle. But 2, eventually, with the help of her network and because she was out there doing the thing, she found other institutions, she found other employers who were also willing to pay her for work, for her coaching, something that she had started out doing with just one employer in one job. 3, she also didn't do this for free, and her coaching school was big in helping her to be and get into the mindset of charging for her work, no matter how small. And if you're struggling with this idea, it's so important to rip that Band-Aid off so that you can start flexing that muscle and eventually start charging more over time. And it's kind of weird, right? Like if you're liberating your work, you're already being paid for the work. Like, what is the struggle to imagine that you can be paid for that work from someone else as well? You're already doing it. This helps you to build a proof of concept for yourself. Once you've got income coming in from another employer or, another institution, through contract work or whatever, even if it's just a tiny bit, this helps to build that muscle in your mind. And even if it doesn't completely replace what you're doing, like if it doesn't, you're not making so much that it's completely replacing your current salary, even if that's not happening, it's more than what you've got now. And it's proof of concept, as I said, that you can do this. And it'll be easier to build on that and expand that later. 4, Ashira kept doing this more and more, and she kept diversifying her work portfolio. And diversifying meant doing it with more and different people. And this is something I talked about in episode 57, Build and Diversify Your Work Portfolio. So go back and check that out. 5, the 5th thing, by the time she was making the decision to leave her full-time job, this was a well-fixed muscle for her. This, doing the work outside and beginning to build networks and make connections through that work. By the time she was making that move, she wasn't brand new to the game. And having this type of setup is exactly the type of thing that makes job transitions of all kinds so much easier. Again, I'll say it, doing it now, starting small, being consistent. She did not do this overnight. This is not an overnight thing. She started and kept going until she had built something that gave her options to make another choice. And that's what I want you to remember. You want to have options and you want to create and build those options for yourself. This is not an overnight thing. The people who are able to do this start and keep doing it and building for the long haul. But it's worth it. In the end, it's worth it when you get that financial freedom, that autonomy freedom, that creative freedom, or whatever type of freedom you're looking for. Now, wherever you are on this journey, you might be feeling like, oh, it's going to take forever. Or maybe you feel like it's too late for you. Well, this is where the wisdom of that famous Chinese proverb can give us some inspiration. It says, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is right now. So let's get to it, shall we? Let me help you get started. Getting started is literally the hardest part of all of this, and you'll see that once you've gotten started, the momentum will build. Once you've accepted that this is possible for you, once you've accepted that you can have a unique experience of liberating your work and being paid to be yourself anywhere and from anything, it's time, once you've accepted that this is possible for you, it's time to map out and take your first step. This is where one of the most powerful one-on-one reframe sessions that I do is going to be just the thing that you need. The resume excavation session is going to leave you with a clear idea of what you've got to offer that's valuable to others and also in your sweet spot. It'll help you identify your own aspect of work that you can liberate from your employer and pull income from at least another. This is the jumpstart you need to get unstuck in this journey. So what are you waiting for? Let's do this. Go to reframetocreate.com/resume-excavation and book your session today. See you soon, Creating Maven. Until then, remember to always ask yourself, what will I create?